The wind stirred through the forest like a whispering song, brushing through pine needles and rustling the dry autumn leaves in soft, fluttering waves. A gray streak darted between the trees, silent, swift, and low to the ground. His paws barely touched the earth, yet his heart beat louder than his footfalls. Behind him, the woods grew darker, thicker, filled with the scent of moss and something else, something old. Mist clung to the roots and branches, curling around trunks like sleepy fog spirits. The moon, silver and full, watched from above, casting a pale glow across the clearing ahead. The little wolf slowed at the edge of the trees, panting, his breath clouding the air. He was smaller than most wolves, with a white streak down his back and eyes the color of stormy skies. Something in the clearing shimmered. A pool, still as glass, lay beneath an ancient oak, its surface reflecting not the moon, but a golden sun. The little wolf crept forward, drawn by a warmth that made his fur tingle. The pool's light danced on his face as he leaned closer and saw not his reflection, but the image of a girl with fireflies in her hair, standing in a meadow that smelled like springtime. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded. The pool went dark. From behind, a sound like snapping twigs broke the hush. The little wolf turned sharply. Nothing, only the hush of the trees and the breath of the night. But his fur bristled, and deep in his chest, a feeling stirred. Something had changed. Something had awakened. The little wolf backed away from the pool, his ears twitching and nose lifted to the air. The scent was faint but unfamiliar, like dry feathers and old stone. It wasn't from any creature he knew. A shiver ran along his spine. He had wandered farther than ever before, deep beyond the safe paths where his pack roamed, but he hadn't meant to. Something had pulled him here. Earlier that evening, the forest had been quiet and familiar. He had been chasing fireflies near the riverbank, playing beneath the fading sky when he'd heard it, a cry. Soft and distant, like a child's voice carried by the breeze. He had stopped, ears perked. The cry had come again, sad, calling, lost. He'd looked back toward the hills where his mother and brothers waited, but the sound tugged at his heart, too strong to ignore. He had followed it. Now, standing beside the silent pool, he wasn't sure whether he had found the voice or if it had found him. Above, the moon slipped behind a slow-moving cloud, and the forest dimmed. The little wolf turned, ready to run back the way he came, but the path was gone. Trees stood where none had been before. The clearing behind him had changed shape. Even the scent of the ground felt different. He took a step, then another. Branches creaked above, and a cool breeze whispered through. The little wolf's paws pressed into soft moss, and with each step, he felt the ground lead him. Not away, but deeper still. Soon, he came to a place where the trees grew tall and smooth, their trunks pale and glowing faintly in the darkness. In the center stood a stone, shaped like a crescent moon. Upon it, resting quietly, lay a feather, not a bird's feather, but something larger, silvery blue, and warm with light. The little wolf sniffed it. As he did, the feather lifted into the air, floating gently. He stepped back, watching as the feather spun, then drifted forward, guiding him like a lantern through the trees. He followed. Hours passed, though time felt strange in that part of the forest. Day never quite came, and night never quite left. Along the way, he passed things he didn't understand. A tree that bloomed with bells instead of flowers, each one ringing softly as he passed. Stones that rearranged themselves when he looked away. A fox-shaped shadow that flickered at the edge of his sight, then vanished. But the feather always floated ahead, lighting the path. At last, he reached a glen where the grass grew silver and the air smelled of rain. There, curled inside the hollow of a tree, was a girl. She was no older than the youngest cub in his pack. Her hair was tangled with leaves, and her dress was sewn from petals and string. She was asleep, but her face was streaked with dried tears. The feather floated down and touched her brow. At once, her eyes opened bright as stars, wide with wonder. She didn't speak, but she smiled when she saw the little wolf. She reached out, and though he hesitated, Something in her gaze made him step forward. Her fingers brushed his fur gently, and warmth spread through him like sunlight. Together, without words, they began to walk. The girl pointed ahead, and the little wolf understood she was looking for someone, her family, perhaps. Or maybe a way home. He didn't know how he knew, but he did. As they traveled, they came to a bridge made of vines, swaying over a river that sang like a lullaby. The girl paused, looking afraid. The little wolf stepped forward first, placing one paw, then another, showing her it was safe. She followed close behind, holding her breath until they reached the other side. Next came a grove filled with mirrors hanging from the trees, each one showing a different memory. In one mirror, the girl saw herself in a village, dancing with laughter. In another, she stood beside an older woman who looked just like her. Tears welled in her eyes again. The little wolf nuzzled her hand, reminding her she wasn't alone. Then the forest grew darker. The air thickened, and the trees bent inward. Strange whispers echoed, saying things that made the girl cover her ears. Shadows moved on their own, and cold wrapped around them. The little wolf growled low, standing between the girl and the darkness. From the mist came a shape. It was tall and crooked, with eyes like empty holes, and a voice that rasped like wind through dead leaves. The creature didn't walk, it slid. Around it, the plants withered. The little wolf barked once, sharp and clear. The creature paused. The girl, trembling, reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a shard of glass from one of the forest mirrors. It glowed faintly in her palm. The creature hissed and drew back. But it didn't leave. The girl looked to the little wolf, and he stepped forward, his fur bristling. This time, he didn't feel small. He remembered the shimmer of the pool, the warmth of the feather, and the kindness in the girl's eyes. He remembered his pack, his brothers, the way they always stood together. He remembered that even the smallest wolf could guard what he loved. He howled, not a loud, fierce howl, but a clear, steady one that echoed through the trees like a promise. The air changed. Light spilled from above, golden and strong. The dark creature shrieked and scattered, its shadow torn by the light. Silence returned. The girl knelt beside the little wolf, her eyes shining. She pressed her hand to his chest, and he felt her heartbeat, steady and strong. Together, they walked on. At last, the trees opened, and they came upon a field bathed in morning light. In the distance, a cottage stood, smoke curling from its chimney. Voices called out. The girl broke into a run. A woman rushed from the doorway, her arms wide. The girl leapt into her embrace, laughing, crying all at once. The little wolf watched from the edge of the trees. The woman looked toward him, her face soft with gratitude. She nodded once, slow and full of meaning. Then, as the girl waved goodbye, the wind shifted and the little wolf turned back into the forest, the feather now resting behind his ear. He wasn't lost anymore. He was finding his path. The little wolf trotted through the deep woods, the golden morning behind him, fading into twilight once more. He didn't look back at the cottage or the girl, though her face stayed warm in his memory. Her laughter had lifted something inside him, something brave and awake. The wind carried scents of pine and moss, but also something else now, a stirring, a pull. The forest no longer felt like a place he was passing through. It felt like it was watching him, waiting for him to choose. He followed a narrow trail that curved like a river, and with every step, the trees grew stranger, bending toward him, their branches draped in ribbons of moonlight. He came to a hollow tree, where roots curled like sleeping snakes and a single stone sat nestled in the bark. On the stone lay a paw print, not just any paw print, his own, glowing faintly with silvery dust. He placed his paw over it, and the ground rumbled softly beneath him. The forest opened. Beyond the hollow, a valley stretched out, wrapped in thick mist. Shapes moved within it, shapes that shifted like wolves, but walked upright and whispered in voices that didn't belong to any creature of fur or claw. The mist tugged at the little wolf's fur, whispering that he didn't belong here, that he was small and soft and lost. But he remembered the mirror grove. He remembered how the girl had cried and still walked forward. He remembered the creature of shadows, and how his howl had cracked the darkness. He was not the same cub who had chased fireflies. He stepped into the valley. The mist coiled tighter, curling around his legs like vines, and soon he saw them 3 wolves, tall and gray, their eyes glowing with cold fire. They stood like stone, watching him with stillness that made his heart beat harder. These were not of his pack. These were the old ones, the spirits of wolves, who had long guarded the forest's deep places. The one in the center raised its head. Its voice was not a sound, but a feeling in the air. "Why have you come, little brother?" He bowed his head, unsure how to answer, but the forest answered for him. Images flickered through the mist, the girl in the hollow tree, the singing river, the dark creature, the mirror memories. His journey, his courage, his kindness. The second wolf stepped forward, its eyes softer. "You have followed the path of light." But the test remains. Before he could ask what test, the ground split open, and a roar filled the valley like thunder tearing the sky. From beneath, a creature rose, not the shadow from before, but something older, heavier, bound in thorns and dripping darkness. It was a beast made of forest fear branches, for claws, teeth like splintered bark, and a heart that beat with hunger. It had no eyes, but it turned toward the little wolf. "You are not enough," it growled, though its mouth did not move. "You are just a cub." The little wolf stood his ground. The creature lunged, massive and wild. The valley shook. The little wolf ran not away, but toward. He darted beneath the beast's legs, weaving like wind, leading it in circles. But the beast was faster than it looked. It lashed out, claws scraping stone. A shallow cut opened along the little wolf's shoulder, stinging hot. Pain bloomed, but he did not stop. He leapt onto a rock, then to a fallen tree, climbing higher. The beast followed, snarling, shaking the earth with its rage. Then the little wolf remembered the feather behind his ear. He tilted his head, and it floated free, glowing, warm, golden. It hovered above him, and as he howled, the feather shone brighter, lighting the whole valley. The 3 spirit wolves lifted their heads. Together, they howled. The light spread, wrapping the valley in gold. The beast shrieked, rearing back. Light poured into the cracks of its bark-like skin. Flowers bloomed from its thorns. It howled, not in anger now, but in sorrow. Then it fell slowly, gently into a bed of moss, its form unraveling into roots and petals and soft green leaves. Silence returned. The mist lifted. The spirit wolves stepped forward, their eyes no longer glowing, but gentle and full of pride. The third spirit, smallest of the 3, lowered its head. "You have done what many do not. You protected without power. You faced fear without fury. You remembered who you were, even when all said you were nothing." The little wolf bowed low, his heart pounding like drums, but he felt no fear now, only a deep, glowing peace. Then the forest around him began to change. The pale trees returned, the silver grass, the mirrored grove. He saw it all at once. His whole journey spread before him like a story written in starlight. And at the center of it, not a hero, not a warrior, but a small wolf who had chosen again and again to be brave, even when no one was watching. The spirit wolves faded like mist in the sun. The ground beneath his paws warmed. The breeze sang softly, and somewhere far off, a girl laughed beside a cottage. The little wolf stood in the golden clearing where it had all begun, beside the still pool beneath the ancient oak. The water shimmered once more, and this time, when he looked into it, he saw himself not small or lost, but steady and true. He had passed the test. He had become more than a cub. He had become a guardian. The clearing was quiet now, bathed in morning gold, though the sun itself was not yet visible above the trees. The mist had gone, and the still pool no longer shimmered with magic. It reflected only the sky and the branches above, but that was enough. The little wolf stood at its edge, still and calm, breathing in the scent of pine and dew. Something inside him had settled. Not far away, a fox stepped from the trees. Its fur was rust red, and its tail trailed sparkles of frost that melted on the grass. It paused when it saw him, head tilted, eyes bright with old knowing. For a moment, neither moved. Then the fox dipped its head once, in a silent nod, and vanished back into the forest. The little wolf turned his paws toward home. The journey back was different. The woods that had once felt strange and twisting now felt open and alive. He recognized the bellflowers that sang when the wind brushed past. He stepped over the same stones that had once shifted behind him, but now they stayed still, as if they too had found peace. As he walked, the feather behind his ear glowed softer and softer until, at last, it lifted into the breeze and floated away, drifting toward the treetops like a spark, returning to the stars. The path sloped gently upward, the trees thinned, and suddenly, there it was his world. The wide hills rolled beneath a sky brushed with pink. The river glittered below like a ribbon of light, and on the ridge above, dark shapes stirred. His family, his pack. He climbed the hill, his legs tired but strong, and as he neared the top, one of the shapes broke away and ran toward him. It was his mother, her fur silver-tipped, her eyes full of fierce love. Behind her came his brothers, larger than him still, but slower to reach him. She reached him first and touched her nose to his head. She smelled him, and in that breath, she knew everything. He had left a cub, he had returned something more. That night, the pack gathered beneath the stars. They listened as the wind told his story, not in words, but in rustling leaves and distant howls. The fireflies returned to dance through the trees, and the moon glowed full above. The little wolf curled beside his brothers, his mother close behind him, her heartbeat calm and sure. He dreamed of the mirror grove, the singing river, and the girl with fireflies in her hair. In the dream, she stood by the same pool beneath the ancient oak, her hand outstretched toward the water. As her fingers touched the surface, ripples spread in every direction, and tiny feathers rose from the waves, dozens of them, soft and glowing. Some floated toward the hills, some drifted into the sky, others sank into the earth, and one, small and silver blue, found its way back to him, curling gently into the grass beside his paw. When he woke, dawn was painting the horizon, and the forest was singing. The days passed, and the little wolf, though not so little anymore, grew strong and swift. He still played by the river and chased the wind across the hills, but he also listened. He watched. He followed the quiet paths others overlooked. He helped the youngest cubs find safe places to sleep. He guided the lost deer back to their herd. He stood between the frightened and the storm. And though his voice was soft and his paws light, the forest knew him. One afternoon, while exploring near the edge of the woods, he came upon something curious. A ribbon, blue and faded, caught on a branch. It fluttered in the breeze, delicate and familiar. He sniffed it and paused. It smelled of flowers, honey, and the soft dust of dreams. He looked around. The meadow beyond the trees was quiet, but a path had been cleared through the tall grass, not by wolves, not by deer, but by small, steady feet. The girl had passed this way. He followed the trail just far enough to see. There, beyond the meadow, stood a village. Roofs of straw, windows glowing with firelight. And in one garden, beneath a pear tree in bloom, a girl laughed as she spun in a circle, a crown of flowers on her head. She paused and looked toward the forest. Though she couldn't see him, she smiled as if she knew. Then she turned back to her home. The little wolf stepped away, quiet as the falling petals. Some paths crossed for only a while, but the memory of kindness lasts forever. That night, as the stars blinked awake, the little wolf stood once more beside the still pool beneath the ancient oak. He drank from its clear surface, then raised his head to the sky and howled not for help, not for fear, but for joy. His voice echoed through the trees, across the river, through the hills. It reached the village where a girl sat by her window. She closed her eyes and listened, her heart steady and warm. And in the forest, the wind whispered a name the trees would never forget. Little Brother Wolf, for he had walked through wonder and fear, through magic and night, and had returned with a heart both brave and kind. And from that day forward, when the wind howled gently through the trees, the youngest cubs would ask, "Who is singing to the stars?" And the elders would say, "That is the one who found the path no one else could see. The one who followed the feather, protected the lost, and howled the shadows away. That is little brother Wolf." And they would listen, hearts full of wonder, as the forest sang his story again,